The Big Footy Port Adelaide podcast is proudly sponsored by New Vision.
My team, kinda power. I love the power. I love the power.
Hi guys, and welcome to the Big Footy Port Adelaide podcast, a weekly show about all things Port Adelaide Footy Club. I'm your host Macca 19, and joining me as always, co-host Fishing Rick. How are you, buddy?
Lord Macca, I'm good, man. What about you?
Pretty good.
I'm ready to. I think the theme of tonight's show should be gamble. I'm ready to gamble, and looks like the coaches are ready to gamble too.
Yep, I like it. And back on the podcast is the lovely Portia.
Hello, how's it going?
Good. Thanks for coming back.
Thank you for having me.
Now,
Not really.
Not really.
No, not entirely, but
Well,
mostly.
It's been a bit of a depressing week.
It'll take me about a week to completely erase it from my memory, so
Yeah.
a couple of days yet.
So, I mean, this isn't a podcast showdown. Sorry, let me get that right. A showdown podcast. But just in 30 seconds, Portia, what cost us the game?
I think that, I don't know, what the most, if you don't want a non-football reason, it's probably because we were playing at a familiar place with a hostile crowd. I'd say a large part of it was that. It's always something strange about the unfamiliar. It's like a nightmare going to Adelaide Oval, your absolute sacred haven, and then having all these horrible Crows fans, cheering when you lose. Quite a shock, I suppose, maybe, some of that. But really, I think it was just that we didn't want it as much as the Crows did at the end of the day. I think we were just trying to hang in there, and the Crows, it was their grand final. This would be the highlight of their season, so I think they're done. But they got their win. Good for them.
Well, look, let's talk about this week. It's Port versus Essendon this Saturday night at Adelaide Oval. It's going to be a ripper. We've got a 14-10 win-loss record, even though we've lost the last 4 games against the Bombers. And last time we met was a 30-point loss at Docklands last year.
We got reamed last year. Reamed.
Yeah, it wasn't a good game.
No, the umpires reamed us. Didn't they? Was that the year before?
That was the year before.
Was it? Oh, no. One reaming just seems to merge into another one for me with umpires. But what I think of the Dons, I don't know. Cheats.
Straight to the point.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Dons they're really, or the Bombers or Essendon, or whatever we're calling them, they're a really up and down side. I just can't pin them myself. I'm not entirely sure what they are, but I think that we're well placed to deal with them. I don't think they've been in any amazing form, and I think at any moment, the individuals at the team, I imagine that's probably part of why they're up and down, is because it's hard to be a team when everyone in the team's sort of wanting to know about their own personal fate, and I guess that's what the drug saga has done. So that's probably why you get these little moments of individual brilliance, but not really the team getting it together as a whole. It just really disrupts the whole fabric of the club. So you just don't know. Hopefully the fact that we've got a bit more belief in the team, even with these worrying little injuries and so forth, hopefully that holds in good stead, and that Essendon can be made to act like individuals, because that'll definitely bring them down if we can do that.
Yeah, I mean, they're basically the Forrest Gump, the box of chocolates in Forrest Gump. You just never know what you're going to get. They could be completely out of the game and then kick 5 goals in 6 minutes. Then they're back in it. Or they could be up by 5 goals and then lose by 5 goals. So you just really never know what you're going to get with Essendon.
Would you pit this game almost the talls versus the smalls? It's the influence of their tall timber against the influence of our smaller midfielder and forward line.
I wouldn't have thought that they had any particular edge in talls, and I wouldn't have thought we had any particular edge in smalls. I think I think it's fairly even, quite honest.
They don't have any extra talls on the ground or in their side this week. They haven't added anybody. They've dropped Dustin Fletcher. So we're actually going 1 for 1 in terms of key position players with them. I guess the issue is that their tolls are taller than our tolls.
Okay.
Their talls are particularly tall, whereas ours are not overly tall.
Our smalls are particularly small.
that as well, yeah.
It's almost like a Dr. Seuss.
So, do you want to go through the ins and outs for us, Macca?
Absolutely. We've got 3 people, 3 changes this week. Obviously we know that Jackson Trengove is out for quite a long time with an ankle injury. Carlisle's out with a hamstring, and Sammy Gray's been omitted. A bit of conjecture on the boards tonight with the inclusion of Cam O'Shea, Dom Cassisi and Aaron Young. I think a lot of people expected Tommy Cleary to get a go, and a few more people were hoping that Johnny Butcher might get a go as well.
Look, I think that we're dealing in the shallow end of depth. I think that, we could have played any of those guys, but I wouldn't have thought we want to make any significant changes to the structure of the side. I think that bringing in Butcher, for example, would do that. We didn't lose a forward, or not a big forward, so I don't know why we'd change that up. And I think that the hope is that someone like Cam O'Shea coming in will be able to be a bit player. Same with Young, possibly, to cover the people that have actually lost. But I think that they're actually pretty happy with how we line up. And particularly when you've got some of your key players beginning to go missing, it's even more important to maintain a familiar structure just to grind it out. There's nothing worse than losing a key player and then having to restructure the entire side, because that forces everyone into an uncomfortable position rather than, say, a couple of people coming in that aren't quite in their preferred position. So I think that this is probably the right move. I think that's pretty much the right way to go, what we did.
Yeah. I think there's probably two key points with the selections here. I think, number one, Kenny's gone with the players that he can trust. You know, Dom Cassisi's been very good all year. Cam O'Shea, we know how good he was at key times last year, and Aaron Young's had a pretty good season as well. So he's brought back guys that he knows that he can rely on to get the job done. Secondly, is that Essendon's forward line really isn't all that good. You know, it's pretty bloody ordinary. It might be tempting fate saying that, but you know, Jake Carlisle's had a horrible season so far. Patrick Ambrose averages half a goal a game, and Joey Danaher's the only player they've got in their entire squad that's averaged over 1.2 goals a game so far this year. So they just don't kick goals.
That's pretty fair. I'd say that you're quite right in that there's nothing that you would specifically say you'd have to worry about with that forward line. I don't know. A part of me just says we should walk out. 3 weeks ago, if we were facing this team at Adelaide Oval on a Saturday night, we'd say, we'll trounce them. And really, I probably should be saying that, but just that showdown just unsettles you a little bit. But maybe we should just face up the fact that we're probably much better than them when we were on the park, and that we should really be expecting to win by, say, 50 points.
Keep the faith, Portia. That's what I was saying on the boards today. Keep the faith, and I can't see any reason why we shouldn't. Our form for 2013 and 14 has been fantastic, and I think that statement's perfect. We should be beating this side, and we should be confident, and I think we should. And the challenge for us this year was if we did get injuries, and I think that was another good point that you mentioned about testing the depth. That was always for me going to be our challenge. Our starting 22 is great, but how do we go once we get past maybe 25 players? And we've given a fair few players a go, and I don't know if Russell Ebert Handball is still keeping track, and if we've hit our 33rd or 34th player, pushing us out of that Premiership Cup matrix now of having to play no more than 31, 2 or 3 players. But this is the ultimate challenge, and I wonder if Cleary might be a late inclusion for another player, or if we do just go with the small running fleet of players that we've got.
I think that if you're looking at the emergencies, I'd say the only one of those ones that's likely to come in would be Sam Gray. And that would just be, I don't know that there's any faith really shown in Tom Cleary or Ben Newton to really come in and be a difference. I don't think either of them would really add anything. I can't see who you would drop to bring in Tom Cleary, quite honestly, and then expect Tom Cleary to be a better selection. I think we've picked our best side.
I think it's more to do with there might be the chance that Dom Cassisi actually doesn't come up, so he might drop out.
Yeah, well, I mean, if that happens, then I'd be more inclined to bring in Sam Gray, really.
Or Benny Newton.
Yeah, maybe Ben Newton. I don't know.
Yeah, it'd be nice to see Newton get a few games in a row and show us what he can do. I mean, he's been a form player in the SANFL, and a few people believe that he deserves an opportunity. I'm one of those, but again, I can see who do you push out for him. Everyone's doing quite well. I know a lot of people were quite animated about Kane Mitchell maybe making way for Cleary or Newton.
Yeah, but I'm just not convinced that either of them would do anything better than Kane. Because as much as I'm not a Kane Mitchell fan, he still does get around the ball quite a bit, and you'd have to expect that in this week. So, admittedly, it's a short-term decision, but in this week, it's going to be better to play Kane Mitchell than it is to play Ben Newton because Ben Newton's just such an unknown quantity, and he's probably got a lot of the game to learn at AFL level. And I guess at this point, we're trying to protect the position, and we're doing the Choco-esque thing of as we should be, of trying to just protect where we are and hang in there while the top team gets healed up and gets back in the side. So I think even there, Kane Mitchell's probably a better bet because he has played a fair bit of football this year, even if he does have a few things that are not ideal in his game.
Yeah, I mean, given that we lost the showdown and now this game really does become such a must-win game for the Port Adelaide Footy Club, you do want to go in with sort of better the devil you know sort of thing than throwing in a Cleary or a Newton and a Butcher, and you just don't know what you're going to get with those three players at this point in time.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those games that if we lose, it could be one of the ones that you say, oh, well, that's when Port lost the season. That's when Port lost the premiership. Quite clearly, because losing 2 games in a row at Adelaide Oval would make anyone query, and it would certainly make the players query the next time we play. I think that we really just want to get the points on the board for this one, so don't mess around with playing a guy that's not pretty battle-hardened at this point, because they're going to come for us, Essendon, I reckon. I think that as much as I think we can beat them, I think they've got same as Adelaide the week before, they would love to pin their season on beating one of the top teams.
Yep.
Why not?
Well, what's going to turn it around for us this week then? What's going to be the difference, say, between last week and this week for us to actually get that win on the board?
Hopefully better team work than our opponents, and really also that we'll have a clear home ground advantage again, where last week I suppose we didn't have a crowd advantage. And the team we played was probably the most familiar with Adelaide Oval apart from ourselves. We'll have home ground advantage, literally, in all respects. So I think that's enough to win you a close game, and as we sort of discussed earlier, I don't think it's going to be a close game necessarily. I think that we've got a team, and they've got a bunch of players that are all independently trying to do it the best they can under, I suppose, what is pretty difficult circumstances to be a football player at the moment. So I think that's all it'll be. We're in a better position, and we're at home. I think that's all we need.
I think it's going to come down to the midfield again, just like it did in the showdown last week. That's probably where we lost it. The midfield, that's where all their star power is. Essendon, they've got Goddard, they've got Stanton, they've got Zaharakis, they've got Heppel. They've got a lot of big names through that midfield. Chapman as well runs through there. If they all come to play, then that's going to make it very, very difficult.
I forgot about Chapman.
I kind of think that this will be a good game for the likes of Pittard and Broadbent, actually. I think that we've talked about how Essendon's forwards line not necessarily all that great. So I think if we can put in, as you said, make it a fierce contest in midfield, then their forward entries are not going to be particularly controlled, and I think our guys can pick it off. Hopefully Cam O'Shea too, for that matter. And I think that's the defence we've sort of gone with there in a lot of respects, is because we've lost, I suppose, our 2 best stoppers, what we've got is a bunch of intercepting defenders in our back line. So I think that we will be playing, hopefully, a very tackle-heavy physical game on Essendon's midfield, which should increase the pressure, and hopefully we'll see a few more turnovers to our defenders who can then hopefully counter-attack pretty well. So that means it's on our half-back line, I suppose, our back flankers to intercept and rebound quickly, and then it's on our runners like Pollock and White to sort of bring it up the field as quickly as possible and then get it to a secure target in the forward line. So I think that the midfield is going to be important, but I think it's mostly going to be about forcing the Essendon midfield to not be at their best. I think that'll put us in the best place for a win.
It's a massive advantage for us, I guess, isn't it, that it's here and not over there in the enclosed Etihad Stadium. That could have been a different story, couldn't it?
It could, but I wouldn't have thought that would go against us, quite honestly.
Can't you tell I'm a bit paranoid about their tolls?
No, not at all. No, I didn't realise that, Rick. But tolls. If they're getting clean delivery to their tools, then it doesn't matter if it's wet or dry. They'll mark and they'll kick goals. So it's really just about stopping that clean delivery, regardless of what field we're at. It might be slightly easier at, I still want to say Colonial Stadium, Docklands, but really there's no reason why we couldn't play the same in either location.
What about Matt Lobey?
A lot of the games are going to come down on Lobey versus Ryder, I think.
Think Lobey can negate Ryder?
I don't know. I'm more thinking that Ryder will negate Lobby.
Yeah,
that's what I think is more likely. Not that Ryder will necessarily win, but that he'll do enough that Lobby has no real impact, and then it does come down to the midfield, as Macca said. So that would be more a concern for me.
I'm trying to reflect on the previous games, how Ryder's gone against Lobey. I don't really recall Lobey being a great one for the guys that sort of jump high over the top of him. That's where the loss of Tringo will probably hurt us a little bit with him not being in the side with that athletic type ruckman. I thought Lobey sort of prefers more the ones that don't jump, the more wrestling type ruck.
Yeah, look, I think that Lobby past matches probably don't really matter so much, because what's really changed about him is that he's become a much smarter ruckman over the last couple of years. That was my criticism of him years ago, which is that he just seemed dumb. He'd get in wrestles that he couldn't win. He'd lose sight of the ball, but that's just stopped being the case so much. So I think the fact that Ryder's a leaper is not necessarily a great concern, as long as Lobby is not inhibited by the umpires in positioning himself where he wants to be. So umpires will be a big impact on that ruck duel, I think. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, in the match last year, Lobey was much better than Ryder. He had 42 hitouts last year, Lobey. The part that killed us last year was that they had Bellchambers, who snuck forward a lot and kicked 5 goals.
Yeah.
That was where they won the game last year. And I thought they might bring him back this week just to try and stretch our defence, knowing that we've had our 2 best key defenders out, but they've decided against that, and he's not even part of the emergencies either.
What about Westhoff as our backup ruckman? Is that an issue for us?
Well, I mean, he can be our backup ruckman. I'm sure we'll have a couple of people try and be a backup ruckman. Maybe even Cam O'Shea will be a backup ruckman, but I wouldn't have thought that it would be a role I would be saying as a masterstroke. Myself, I would have thought we kind of need him in the usual Justin Westhoff role, where he just sort of runs around the place and tries to get the ball. I don't know.
No, I think it's clear Westhoff will be the second ruckman.
Probably.
We really don't have anyone else that can really properly do that role effectively.
Yeah, I guess that's what I was trying to say, is that he's not that he's going to be like our secret weapon like Tringo sometimes is, but that he's the guy that has done it before, so let's just stick with that.
Yeah. It's through necessity more than anything else this week, and that's why a lot of people thought that maybe Butcher might come in this week, is so that when we do have to play Westhoff in the ruck, we still have a second key forward that we can rely on up forward.
Rely on? Okay.
Well, as in putting the arms in the air and hoping to take a mark, sort of reliance.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
She's not convinced.
Well, the issue we have is that do we want Schultz as the only toll, and therefore allowing Cale Hooker to take another 37 intercept marks against us like he did last year?
It really depends on whether we decide to use Jake Schultz at all. Like, how many games did we play with Treadray back in the day where he was just a decoy? There was a few of them when it became tight and we had a bit of struggle for backup for him. And I think that using Jake Schultz that way would not necessarily be a bad thing if it's not working out all that well, and just try and run it into the half forward and ping at goal. You'd hope by now we know the ground reasonably well, and we've got a few players that you'd think are reasonably good kicks at the 50. So I don't know, maybe a bit of that.
No, if it doesn't work out too well, Macca, I know how we can get lots of drinks out of the locker room now, so we can just drown our sorrows.
That's it. I like it.
So what about, as a fellow half-back flanking fan, would your love for O'Shea, you pleased with the progression that Pittard's making, Portia?
I've been pretty pleased with Pittard the last couple of weeks because he's just done his job and got on with it, which has been great. But I am extremely... I'm glad that O'Shea's back in the side, but I think it's really unfortunate that he's coming back into the side in a week when we are short on key position defenders, because I don't know, it's a bit rough to sort of come in your first game and find that the defence is in tatters and then try and make your way back into the side. Not exactly the best chance, but he's got to make the best of it anyway, so hopefully he'll do okay.
Craig.
Yeah, let's get on to the questions this week, mate. Time to stand up. Rick, I'll start with you, mate.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Brad Ebert. I was a bit disappointed with Brad over last week and over the last couple of weeks. I think the last 2 games since his terrific Sydney game haven't been probably to his high standard. So, and it goes in with your leadership theme and our disappointing midfield. So I'm going to go with Brad.
Yep, that's a good call.
I'm going to go with Aaron Young just because he keeps being in and out of the side, and I think it'd be really nice to see him stand up and say, I want a spot in the first 22, because he's not going to get a lot more chances this year, hopefully, if we get our guys back. So Aaron Young for me.
Does he need to be getting a full game?
I think that would be great, but I think he's got to put his hand up and say he deserves it. So that's how he does it, by doing that.
You could almost mount a case that he has put up his hand to say he's deserved it. I mean, last week in the SANFL, he dominated, and most of the games he's come on as a sub. He's done his job to aplomb.
I don't think you can use SANFL form to say you deserve a full game at AFL level. It's just enough to say you're worth considering. So, but I think that his AFL performances so far, they've been okay, but there's been nothing that make you say, I can see Aaron Young as blah, and have confidence in any consistency in his form in that respect at all. Now, he's been played in a lot of different positions, which makes it hard, but that's why I'm saying it'd be really great to see him stand up and say, right, I'm going to make this position, this game, this role my own in whatever role he gets allocated this game, and hopefully he can stick in there, because I think he's it's not bad.
That's fair enough. I think his full games so far this year have been a bit underwhelming. As sub, he's been very, very good.
Yep.
So if he does get a chance to play a full game, or at least start on the ground, hopefully he makes this one a winner this time. For me, my time to stand up, it's going to be Cam O'Shea, simply because it's great that he's back in the side, and I really hope he plays fantastically this weekend so he stays in the side. He's one of my favourite players. He's back in there. Make it count, Cam.
Yeah, totally agree. Put pressure on Pittard.
Hey, steady on.
Or are you saying that we couldn't do with someone that's equally as good or better than Pittard? Is that what you're saying, Rick? That we should not be trying to excel as a team by having O'Shea and challenging Jasper Pittard for his spot?
You're just in fantasy land, because that's just completely unrealistic. There's no one better than Jasper Pittard, and you know that. So you know that Pittard's just flowing past O'Shea. So,
but imagine if you had Jasper Pittard and then another person who was as good as or better than Jasper Pittard. How good that would make our side.
Well, it just means that we wouldn't need Craig on the podcast anymore, and you and me would just dominate every episode.
That's true. So, for Craig's sake, let's hope that doesn't quite happen.
Cam O'Shea out. Let's get him out. That's it. I need to protect my spot here.
You got to pick a tall halfback flanker, Macca. That's just all it is. Start planning, go through the draft and just work out who we're going to pick, and we'll definitely pick at least one.
Is Greg Bentley still available? Or...
No,
Where is he now? We could have a Where Are They Now segment, Macca.
We could. All right, let's get on with it. Danger Man, Portia. Who's going to be their Danger Man this week?
Heppel. It's too obvious, but it's going to be Heppel. I suppose if I was going to go for someone a bit off the ball that would really infuriate me, would be someone like Jason Winderlich. I don't really like him as a player, but he's the sort of guy that could get out of our grasp and be annoying. But Heppel, I think, is my first choice there. It's just, if he gets on top of the midfield extraction, then really that's going to be very challenging for us to deal with.
You don't rate Jason Winderlich?
I do. That's why he's annoying.
But Mark Prosciutto said he was a 60-goal-a-year forward earlier this year.
Oh, well, who am I to contradict Mark Prosciutto?
The chairman.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so that's mine, Dyson Heffel. It's obvious, but whatever.
That's fair enough. Who do we think Kane Corns might go to? Because I think there's players there that we will see Kane Corns this week do a strong defensive job. You know, Stanton's someone that has torn us to shreds in the past.
Yeah, Stanton. Why not keep him on Stanton? It's as good as any, really. If he can completely shut out Stanton, if he can do a really good lockdown, that'll help us a lot, I suppose. But I can't see any other really obvious natural matchups for him.
I'm going Paul Chapman.
That's fair enough.
Only because of years gone by and the mental scarring he's given me.
I still have nightmares.
It's just, I can just see, I mean, you're just talking about their lack of goal scoring options. He's one guy that could quite possibly kick half a dozen on us. And, and that could be enough with a little collection from the other players to sort of get them over the line. And I guess if we had our regular defenders and like full fit and firing, I'd probably say maybe Tom Jonas would go on him with, for that size and bulk and that little bit of extra height to run with him. But obviously we're probably not going to be able to afford that luxury of running Jonas on him. And, maybe your mate O'Shea, Portia, might go on him, but I'm not sure that he... Oh, is he going to be strong enough?
So I think Dom.
How strong do you need to be?
I don't know. He just looks really strong to me, and he's smart. So, yeah, maybe Dom might be the one.
I'll start with Dom.
I wouldn't start with Dom because he's been... No, I wouldn't make that match up at all because I think that there's not been anything that's made me convinced that Dom Cassisi would beat Paul Chapman at any point in their career.
Well, do you want an accountable player on Paul Chapman or one that's willing to run off him and sort of try and expose him?
I'd be more inclined to just put Impey on him and hope that Impey can get off and create a bit as well.
See, this is probably another reason why maybe Cleary should have been included, because then you would be able to have Tom Jonas play on Paul Chapman.
That's right.
But we most likely won't be able to this week.
All right, so just a question. If Cleary would allow us to play Tom Jonas on Paul Chapman, then who is it that we would be putting Cleary up against that Tom Jonas is going to cover? So do we really think that Cleary could beat whoever it is that we're going to be playing Tom Jonas on preferentially to Paul Chapman?
I would think Cleary would do the job on Patrick Ambrose if we were going to bring him in, or he would do a job on Jake Carlisle.
Okay. Ambrose, because, would you have played Jonas on Ambrose? Like, who would you have played Jonas on if we had an extra tall backman available?
Well, we'd be putting him on Paul Chapman.
Yeah.
So that's your first choice regardless. So then why would Cleary make a difference? Yeah.
Well, if we play Jonas on Chapman, well then what do we got on how tall's Ambrose?
196.
So then we'd be left with Homch will probably go to Danaher. So then we'd be looking at O'Shea. Who's 193? Are they sort of similar in bulk or size?
Cam O'Shea's 191, I think. So I would think O'Shea will, as it stands right now, I would think O'Shea would start on Ambrose. I would think Homch will get the job on Danaher and Jonas will go to Carlisle.
197 is Cam O'Shea.
Yeah, he's not 197 centimetres.
That's what it says on Google, and Google's always right, as we know.
She is right there. If it was Wikipedia, that would be completely different.
Oh, look, my danger man's got to be Paddy Ryder, simply for the fact that I don't think he's had a great year, but I think he's someone that can jump over Lobie. And even though Lobie did the job on him last time, this week's going to be a different game. I think he's got the ability and the sneakiness to sort of creep forward and have the possibility to kick a couple of goals, which might be able to stretch our defence a little bit. I don't know. He's just someone that I think is going to have a very good game this week, Paddy Ryder. I can't put my finger on why. I just think that it's going to happen.
You have the vibe.
I have the vibe. The key to winning, Rick.
The key to winning is for us to be a lot more accountable in the midfield. I was very uncomfortable for most of the game last week. I thought the Crows had a lot more run in open space against us than we've allowed all other teams this year. And so I want to see our midfield come back to their accountable best.
Mine's kind of related to Rick's in that it's about accountability, but it's about, I suppose, just trying to break them down into individuals. I think it's doable. I think there's a lot of guys there that are not necessarily for the team, and I think if you can isolate some of the key ones of those, I think that that'll really help. If they can get them pointing at each other and saying where were you and why didn't you honour my lead and whatever else. I think that if we can just be constantly accountable, constantly in their face, I think that we'll completely smash them and they'll give up.
I also think if the crowd by the fence all bring syringes, we might distract the Essendon players, and they might be lured over the boundary to the crowd, seeing if there's any free drugs around. So I think everyone should take heed of that. And
I was thinking if you went along wearing white coats and carrying clipboards, they'd be a bit more concerned as well.
I like where this podcast is going. Look, my key to winning is ensuring that our backline stands up with the absence of our two best and most experienced defenders. I've got faith that individually these guys are good enough to be playing at AFL level, but as a group, I think losing those two guys is going to hurt quite a bit. So really for me, the key to winning revolves almost entirely around our defence standing up as a group and doing a job on the taller forward line than what we'll have out on the park this week.
Yep. Totally agree.
And prediction, Portia?
I reckon we're going to win by 50 points.
Nice. Rick?
Well, Essendon haven't really traditionally played well here, have they?
Well, there's
Not
no
really,
pressure
no.
on
Adelaide in general.
Well,
Pardon?
does that really matter?
Well, it does, because I'm going to say Port by 49 because Essendon don't travel well.
Look, I'm going to pick Port by 42 points. I think.
Oh, we're doomed.
Oh, sorry. I'm going to pick Essendon by 8 points because
That's
Portia
much
didn't
better.
like my original pick.
Yeah, good. That's all right.
There we go.
I still think you might have jinxed us, Macca, and it's all your fault if we lose now.
Yeah, I'll take that.
Okay, good.
Portia, thanks for coming on.
No problem. Thank you for having me here.
Great to have you back on again.
Yeah, it was fun.
And it was the shortest podcast we've ever had with Portia.
I've still gone for an hour.
Yeah. Yep.
That is short for us.
True.
You go.
That is true. Rick, I'll see you at the footy, mate.
Yes, we will. Have a few brewskis.
Absolutely. Go the power.
Go the power.
Port.
Sends it long. Modlop just on and takes the mark. He can give Port Adelaide the lead. Hamstring hurt. Plays on. Sends it high. Goal square. Long. McVeigh gets back. Port Adelaide in front. The magic man of all people. He had to be the one.